This is James Miceli, and you're listening to Pro Lacrosse Talk.
Right off the bat, there's Lyle Thompson.
Courier, ball game.
Carly Omiller showing off those shifty skills.
Schreiber driving hard down the alley, and he scores.
What a goal from Josh Bird.
Kayla Trainer fires to score.
Are you kidding me?
By Dylan Ward. Gets topside, Rambo scores!
Welcome to Pro Lacrosse Talk on the Lacrosse Playground Podcast Network, your go-to podcast for interviews with professional players, coaches, and executives, as well as the latest news and analysis from all three professional lacrosse leagues. Now, here are your hosts, Adam Moore and Hutton Jackson.
All right, welcome to Pro Lacrosse Talk. This is our first episode of Season 3, our first episode in 2021, and our first under the new Lacrosse Playground Podcast Network. We have James Miceli here from Epoch Lacrosse. He's joining us as our first guest of Season 3. James played at Adelphi and is the CEO of Epoch. James, welcome to the show.
Hey, thanks for having me, guys. How you doing today?
Doing well. We've been talking a lot in the past couple months. We'll get into the LPG a little bit. Lacrosse Playground is now back. We're going to talk on that a little bit later. But let's start, I guess, at the beginning of your lacrosse career. When did you first get involved in lacrosse? How did you find your way at Adelphi?
Yeah, we have to go back some time here. I was 9 years old, and I got a stick for Christmas. It was a quick stick, brown leathers. In fact, Jason Ellison from Tamilax made me a replica about 4 years ago and sent me one. So I have a replica of the first stick I ever got. But I got on Christmas morning. My dad was a lacrosse player. He played at Sewanaka High School under Bill Rich, which was legendary, X amount of wins in a row. Mm-hmm. And he just always talked about getting sticks for my brother and I. I have an older brother, who's 15 months older, LT. We got sticks that morning, and I fell in love. I tell my wife, like, that was my first love. Sorry, I can't go back and change it. But every day since then, I've been involved or talked about or coached or played lacrosse in one way or another.
That's great. And obviously you enjoyed your youth league because you ended up going to Adelphi. How did you manage to make your way there? And what was that experience like for you?
Yeah, so I had, my dream school was Syracuse. I grew up watching the Gates, grew up watching John Zuberti and that whole crew. And that's what I wanted to do. I wanted to play in the Dome. I wanted to wear the orange. But DNA had something else to do with that. It was probably one of those things where I would have gone and worked really hard. And then maybe my senior year I would have played. But I just loved the game too much. But while like the Gate brothers were like the Michael Jordan for me, that's what I wanted to be. Lacrosse has these kind of unique grassroots heroes. And truthfully, the Ray brothers were my idols. And I used to go to Adelphi camps. Coach Sheehan used to run the camps, and you had Gordon Purdy, you had Jeff and Scott Ray, and all these, Tom Aiello, all these great Long Island players that played at Adelphi would be there, and I'd spend summers with them, it felt like. And I fell in love with the brown and gold at the time and the Panthers, and my dad used to take me to games. I have a poster in my office from 1990 when Syracuse and Adelphi played at Manhasset High School. And I remember driving to the game and just watching this and just fell in love. So for me, like, Adelphi wasn't like, Syracuse was my dream. But, it's like they always say, shoot for the stars. If you land on the moon, you did okay. Like, I was over the moon. I went to Adelphi, and it was pretty cool because my brother went there the year before. And my parents were always a very strong part of my lacrosse, involvement. And for them to be able to drive 45 minutes to an hour to come see all my home games and have them there for the tailgates was like added to the experience. So, I always say, I would love to play the Syracuse D1 national championship, all that stuff. But Adelphi was the absolute perfect school for me on size, the ability. And listen, a great group of guys, won a few national championships, and we still have this group text message, and it's so funny, even on Christmas morning, where people just wishing each other Merry Christmas and stuff. It's really cool.
Yeah, I think the camaraderie of the lacrosse space is, the community is one of the aspects that I think draws everyone kind of in. Me and Adam both went to D3 schools, both came from lacrosse families as well too. So talk to us a little bit about, moving on from Adelphi, kind of where you kind of came up with the idea for Epic, and what was your vision for Epic at the start and how it's kind of grown over the years.
Yeah, for sure. So after Adelphi, I actually went and worked for NASCAR. I did an internship with NASCAR in their corporate marketing office. And when school ended, it was kind of like an entry-level job. It definitely cost me more money for my monthly train pass, my Subway, and my coffee and bagel in the morning than they were actually paying me. But it was an unbelievable experience to be involved in the sports marketing side of things. And NASCAR was sort of leading the edge on all that. And then after NASCAR, I started working for a company called The Wiz, which was kind of like a Best Buy, but it was regionalized to Long Island, New Jersey, and Connecticut. Most people know The Wiz because it was in the Seinfeld episode, and Elaine dated The Wiz. So if I bring up people, usually go, "Oh my God, it was Seinfeld." But it was cool. It taught me sort of like hand-to-hand combat of sales. Like, how do you sell a DVD player and TVs and things of that nature. And from there, I got picked up to a company called Pioneer Electronics. Most people know them from their car stereos. I was in the home division selling plasma TVs and Blu-rays and things like that. In fact, my first day on the job, a 50-inch plasma TV was $24,999. And my last day on the job, about a decade later, was about $2,400. So, consumer electronics is the only industry in the world where things come out bigger, faster, stronger, and they're less expensive. But my job at Pioneer took me from Long Island to Minneapolis because Best Buy is based here, and so is Target and some other companies. And then from there, I moved out to Los Angeles, where Pioneer's headquarters, USA headquarters, was in Long Beach, and I sort of ran all their national accounts, and I basically ran a sales division. And when I was living in California, the beautiful weather, versus New York and Minneapolis, I fell in love with high-end road biking and became enamored with this technology. And I'd walk into the local bike store and see all this carbon fiber and the weight and how to put things together. And I walked into a local South Swell Sports, and I looked at all the sticks, and I hadn't played competitively in a decade, meaning through school. I played in men's leagues and stuff. And I was just kind of shocked that, a sport that over indexes with, household incomes that are a little bit higher, that we were still playing with like cheap aluminum shafts out of Taiwan, plastic heads and a number 8 screw. And I was like, wow, nothing's really changed. And as I dug into it, I started looking at adjacent markets like golf, bike, tennis, hockey. People were using carbon fiber, and the products had, performance, improving qualities about them. But in lacrosse, we were still using, I think by then the biggest advancement was the titanium handle, which happened back in '92, right? So this is quite a bit later, and there hasn't been much advances. So we started looking into it. I surrounded myself with some engineers. We started looking into lacrosse and said, hey, people have tried carbon fiber before. In fact, even when I played, people were introducing sticks that had aramid type qualities to it, like Kevlar. But they just weren't very good. And there was one brand in particular that made a big push into it, but the durability wasn't there. So in fact, the first year that we were selling composite handles, we had to unsell the previous technologies in order to kind of say, hey, this is what Dragonfly has. That's one of the reasons why we put a 1-year warranty on it. Is just basically say, hey, this thing is really, really good. So that's kind of how, went from, moving from Long Island to Minneapolis to handle, the Best Buy count, then out to Los Angeles, and then sitting on the beach one day with a blue notebook and started writing down the ideas for the company Epic, which incidentally, the first name was supposed to be Icon Lacrosse. And we worked with a mom and pop agency, and they were like, hey, Icon's a great name. And we had like fancy spellings, IKON with the little dots over we were going crazy with the logo. But ultimately, if you Google Icon, you get like 4 billion hits. Sure. And they're like, you're going to get lost. And that's where my wife came up with the name Epic, because we were sitting there one day saying, well, what we're doing, this is like a new era. Like this is a whole new era of what we're doing. Like, well, new era is kind of synonymous with baseball hats. You really can't call it a brand new era. And this word came up, EPOCH, in the you know, you had sitting there at night on thesaurus and you Googling, and we hit the button, and the girl in this like beautiful British accent was like epic. And we were like, boom, epic. Like kids talk about things being epic, and that was it. We locked on it and we never looked back.
Yeah, no, that's a really cool backstory, kind of the origin story of the name and whatnot. But let's talk about kind of the growth of Epic and where you are today.
Yeah, for sure. You know, so after we released, we were just carbon fiber composite shafts. That's where we first entered the marketplace. And we started getting some requests. We started building this like brand affinity. And the brand is predicated around technology and innovation and forward thinking. And you know, we progressed into this high-end mesh. We came out with this mesh called Otter Mesh, and we found is this fiber that had a lower specific gravity, which meant it was lighter. It was hydrophobic, so it didn't absorb water. And this is like the days of like people taking nylon mesh and like going to Yankee Candle and like melting, you know, wax and creating this wax mesh, which I thought was like literally the worst technology in the history of lacrosse. Made everything heavier. But we found this cool thing. We ended up partnering up with String King at the time because they had the looms and they were able to manufacture it for us. And people were like, hey, wow, so here's a shaft, and there, you know, the follow-up product is this really cool mesh that was like 18 grams lighter. And then they started asking for heads, and we worked on a project with Flip Nomberg from Rocket Pocket, one of the legends of the game who helped invent the first offset head. And we got together with him and Mike, and we came out with the Hawk. And while the Hawk wasn't what I would consider a great commercial success, it allowed people to say, this company thinks different, right? We're not trying to just copy and, you know, take a head off the shelf and go and 3D scan it and try to put your own sidewalls on it and say, hey, we have a new head. What is basically just a ripoff of something else. We were willing to kind of be risky and try some different things. But as it stands today, you know, aside from helmets and footwear, we offer everything. You know, when we got into protective gear, we launched with the NLL and gave it to pros right away. We had players like Ryan Benesh wearing it right out of the gate, and it kind of gave us some street cred. And then we were able to take that to go to some different schools and talk to some schools and say, hey, you know, this product is being used in box lacrosse and, you know, 0 injuries. This is great stuff. And we were able to kind of build off of that. And then we introduced our women's product, which was absolutely game changing with our 15-degree technology. You know, before that, all women's heads were flat, and we came out, we said, hey, you know, people want the pocket to be higher. How can we solve that problem? And we came up with the 15-degree technology. Now you see almost every head, you know, trying to copy it or rip it off and claim it as, oh, new technology. But really the purpose changed the game. And, you know, we signed a school like UNC. You know, some kind of funny stories, but, you know, UNC called us up and it was like, hey, there's some girls that are showing up, these freshmen with this purpose stick. You know, our contract with SDX expired. Do you guys want to, you know, take a shot at this? And we were like, sure, but we didn't have to talk to UNC at the time. We didn't have a contract. So we basically sent them some samples, and we went out there. We essentially gave like a dealer pitch of what we would talk to a dealer about our technology. And they basically, you know, we gave it. We were like, what do you think? And they were like, the girls love the stick. And we ended up winning the bid. And Coach Levy's quote was, hey, you guys were not the highest bidder, but we believe this technology is going to help us win a national championship. And I think everybody recognized it. You know, the way UNC plays, you know, they lost a triple overtime game in the semifinals to a great Boston College team, you know, 2 years ago, the last time that they had a Final Four. But I think everyone realized that this stick is doing something different. And that's why you have all these copycats coming out now. But we've been able to like introduce products along the pathway. And our goal is that we want to be able to outfit a team. And we still have some work to do. You know, the next phase for us is the stuff that goes on top of your head, which is, you know, a really sort of contentious market. You know, there's one player that has like over 85% share, and then you have some other brands that came in. But, you know, we have some cool, unique ideas and things that we're going to be introducing that we're excited about. So for us, it's about making the best lacrosse gear, using the most technology and outfitting it. And today we can outfit, except for the helmet and shoes, a full team. So we're pretty excited about that.
No, that's great. And I think your brand recognition has really been increasing in the past decade as well. I know you guys are, now partnered with the PLL, with the NLL. You mentioned some of the college programs as well that you're partnered with in Army and UNC and Loyola. And I think Providence is another one you guys added too. I want to talk a little bit further though, back. The Zach Dorn story, I think you told us off pod, was a really great one. Tell people a little bit about that. He set the record for the fastest shot back at the MLL All-Star game. And then you actually just had an epic athlete in Jared Newman crush that record recently too. But talk a little bit about how you guys orchestrated that record-breaking moment with Zach Dorn.
Yeah, so Zach Dorn is a legend. He's one of my favorite people that I ever come across in life, let alone lacrosse. Here's a kid out of the greater Chicago area, Illinois, who was poised to go play lacrosse in college. And then the financial market crisis, father loses a job, they have to help the family. So he decides not to go to school, but gets a job to help support this great family. And sort of, loses and misses the window to kind of go to school. And he's working for Justin Smith at the Lac Shop, who runs some great stores, in that greater Chicagoland area. And they have this shooting cage, and Zach can bring the heat. He was like consistently like 111, and just he was a great player. So when we came out with our Gen 5 shaft, which was a pretty significant leap even from our Gen 4 and otter mesh, we sent him samples, and he put on the shaft and he put on the otter mesh. And he called us up and he's like, dude, I just dropped 116. Now at the time, I think the record was like 112. Mm-hmm. That was the world record. So we conjured this idea that we were going to invite Guinness to come in, and we were going to do this rogue, breaks the world record, launched a Gen 5 shaft and otter mesh. And we were sort of scheming on how we can do that. Scheming makes it sound slimy. It wasn't slimy. It was just like, hey, how can we get Zach Dorn in front of a camera and get Guinness there? And then Zach sends me a screenshot of a Facebook contest that Warrior was going to do at the All-Star game, that in the parking lot, they were going to set up this inflatable and you can go there and shoot. And whoever shot the fastest out of all the fans would get invited on the field to shoot with the pros. Mm-hmm. And he's like, should we do it? And I was like, let's go, let's do it. And again, we're the scrappy company. All of our competitors are telling our dealers carbon fiber is not going to make it. Epic is going to be gone in a year. All the stuff that, all that stuff, that hand-to-hand combat stuff. We had brands that would give better margins to our retailers to keep us out. Like it was scrappy, right? Like it was like this, here's this newcomer out of Minneapolis. Like who the hell do they think they are? They're not even in Baltimore, and we were like, let's go. So we sent Zach Dorn out, and there's a great video out there that kind of shows all this stuff. And we sent a team with him, and he goes and he's got like Chuck Taylors on. I think he even slips, and he shoots like 110 or something like that. He wins the contest by like 30 miles an hour. Mm-hmm. So now, like, it's in between then. He gets invited onto the field, and like all the Warrior guys are like, can you take off your Epic t-shirt? Can we give you a new shaft? Can you wear this? And he's like, no, this is what I'm wearing. Well, he finally got like pigeonholed that like if he didn't take off his Epic t-shirt, that he thought like he might not get on the field. That's the way that like they were kind of making him feel. So if you watch the video, his dad has got his t-shirt on, the big E and everything else. But he's like, I'm not changing my stick, no way. And in no fairness, he was using a God, I forget the name of the head, but it was like an Emperor X or something. So he was using a Warrior head. So credit where credit's due. But this whole thing was like a grassroots guerrilla marketing effort on Epic. So he goes on the field, and all the players are like cheering him on, and players winning $1,000 check, in the lacrosse, it's like it's a pretty big deal. Well, if you listen to the commentary, they're like, oh, we got this fan, and like it looked like he's from a beer league, like kind of like making fun of him, and he gets out there and he just drops heat and like ties the world record. and it's like everyone is just stunned, and it's like, oh my God, a fan. And then like I think everyone realized that this wasn't just a fan that just walked out of the stands, that this was this guy could bring the heat. This is the equivalent of like a driving range pro who could just knock the ball 500 yards, but he can't putt. You know what I mean? Like, he had a very specific skill. So, all of a sudden, like Twitter starts to blow up, and like, and like everyone notices like Epic is getting tagged with Gen 5 and everything else. And then he goes out for a second shot. And I love the video. I mean, I get the chills when I watch it, but he's like loading up his stick. He actually like drops the ball on the ground and has to re-scoop it. Well, he gets up and I think he drops 116, which, smashes the record. He wins the check. The players on the field are stunned. And to their point, it was kind of a bad look, right? Where you have the world's best players in an all-star game and some guy comes out and breaks the world record. I don't think they like the optics of it, that they were sort of positioned against this fan. And he was he crushed it at 116 miles an hour. So we officially signed Zach Dorn as an athlete, so we put out that press release. And he was just basically saying like, this shaft and this mesh helped me do this. And we made videos and it sort of blew up and it went really, really rogue. And I forget who it was, but like Ad Age magazine, I think, called us up. We never ultimately did the article, but it was like in like guerrilla marketing, like people like, that's a really cool story. And I'm internally grateful to Zach for trusting us with us telling his story. And I'll never forget John Flanagan from Universal Lacrosse, which was a multi-store chain in the Jersey area that we've been trying to get him to support us for a very, very long time. And he's like, I just don't have a lot of people coming in. Like, it was always like, come on, John, carry Epic. He called the next morning. He's like, James, people are looking for Epic because, they how many people searched their site.
Yeah.
And it was a big spot for us to kind of take that jump. So it was really fun. And thanks for bringing up that story. I love to tell it.
That's awesome. And yeah, obviously you went from Zach to pros right now, like Matt Rambo, Jules Henenberg. So talk about kind of the Epic athletes you guys have under your wing right now and the role they play.
We have a very sort of conscious effort when we looked at the dynamics of pro lacrosse in the grand scheme of lacrosse. We felt that what the NLL was doing at the time, there was rumors of Paul starting his own thing, but nothing was substantiated. We just felt that for lacrosse to be legitimized with, beyond the lacrosse community, that pro lacrosse would really have to become professional. And we felt it happening. What Nick and Kevin Morgan were doing over at the NLL, and the new teams and everything that was going on there, we felt really, really good about it. We were having conversations with Major League Lacrosse, but felt like there was something else coming that we wanted to kind of hang out and see what that was going to adjust. But we really felt that, pro lacrosse and what affects people buying equipment would start at the top and start to work its way down. In contrast to that, what a lot of our competitors do is they use a lot of the sports marketing deals for the colleges, which becomes a challenge because although it happens and we think it's slimy and dirty, and maybe we'll reserve that for another podcast, but like you're not supposed to show college athletes on your Instagram, right? So when you do the whole, we're ready for the new season to start and you have, all your colleges and they're walking out of the locker room, like you're not supposed to do that. And the complaint, like every time we put out something for UNC, we send it to our compliance officer and they go, yep, good, go ahead and do that. Same thing. But we want to be able to market, our advertising dollars. So we said, hey, the pros, there's no rules, right? You go out there and you can market your pros. So the very first pro that we signed was Ryan Benesh, and Ryan Benesh was tearing it up. We had dragonflies in the NLL for a number of years that we either didn't paint them or there's a lot of tape on them and the guys loved them. So it was kind of an easy in. But when Matt was graduating, there were two players that we got that year that we signed. And it was Matt Rambo and Dylan Malloy. They were both Touraton winners. Matt just came off a national championship. So it was a really good pedigree. And truthfully, we partnered with Legends Lacrosse. And I love what Scott Hockstead is doing out there, and Rory Doucette, just great guys. And we came together and said, well, if you want to sign with STX, you kind of get the Nike deal, right? So you get all the apparel. If you sign with Warrior, you get the New Balance deal. But if you signed with Epic, you didn't get the apparel. And if you signed with Legends, you didn't get the hard goods. So we came together, we talked to these guys and said, hey, here are two like emerging brands that are going to lead the market here very quickly. Jump on the ship now as opposed to later on. And there's also sort of this thing in lacrosse where these guys bounce around. And I think that starts to take away your value. So these guys wanted to be like Wayne Gretzky always used to say, I don't skate where the puck is, I skate where the puck is going. I think these guys started to realize that let's go to where lacrosse is going, and that's going to be Epic, that's going to be Legends and things like that. So when we talk to these guys, and then if you take like the Epic marketing budget and the Legends marketing budget, maybe those guys get 10, 15% more because it's shared as opposed to the max spend that one company is willing to do. So we put these deal together, and it was that first year it was Dylan, Rambo, and Heacock, and those were like big names in the sport. And Dylan and Heacock stayed with the MLL, so we weren't really able to market them because we didn't have the license. But Rambo went into PLL and then becomes Player of the Year, Attackman of the Year, leads the league in scoring. I got this thing here. Sorry, it's probably bad form to go off camera.
All good.
But he scores the game-winning, game-tying, game-winning game, the championship in Philly. I mean, it was like a storybook ending. And we came here the next day, and I said, guys, this is never going to happen again. But literally, Matt Rambo is the best player in the world. He scored all these goals, like he's all over Sports Center. His name, like this is lightning in a bottle. Then we've been able to add to that, But we really took a top-down approach. Pro lacrosse is the future of lacrosse, and we want to be there. We want to be there in a big way, and that's going to start to permeate down through the colleges, as you said. We have Army, and then this year with Providence and Loyola and Limestone. Although I'm not sure we announced that yet, but we have Limestone. Breaking news, which is a D2 powerhouse. What Coach Serino's doing over there. So yeah, it's that top-down approach, which includes the pros that we have.
And I think that's the great approach to take. And obviously, we are Pro Lacrosse Talk, so we obviously think very highly of the pro game. Let's get to probably the biggest news that we have to reveal on this show is Lacrosse Playground coming back. So for people that don't know now, Pro Lacrosse Talk, as I mentioned at the top, is now under the Lacrosse Playground brand. Me and Adam are going to be running Lacrosse Playground from here on out. Let's talk a little bit about your involvement with that, James, and why was it important for you to kind of commit to some digital content realm and media, and I guess talk a little bit, tell people how we got connected and where we're planning on taking this thing.
Yeah, for sure. We're super excited about this. It's been a long time coming. But listen, COVID has been horrible for many reasons, the obvious ones on a macro level, but on a micro level, specifically the lacrosse industry, it certainly hurt it. But for us as a brand, we decided to, not cry and worry about what's happening, but go out and affect change. And we were able to do a lot of things with our company, whether it was product development, restructuring, different initiatives. We felt that this was the perfect time because there was just no business happening for such a long time, that this was something we always had in the back of our mind of like, the digital side of our company, the media side of our company, which is probably exclamated by content, right? We have great content, but when you go to epiclacrosse.com, there's a certain expectation and a promise we're making to our customers, and they don't necessarily want to see highlights, and they don't necessarily want to see, long form gear reviews and all these different things. They want to go there and learn and be able to shop, find a dealer and everything else. So we always kind of wanted to have this site, and we've tried some things in the past. We have an Instagram account called I Am Epic, which is supposed to be a little bit more playful and a little bit more fun. But managing multiple Instagram accounts for a smaller company is challenging, right? It's hard to do. But I got a call during the summer from Adam O'Neill, and Adam O'Neill with the Alfred twins, Harry and Tom, started Lacrosse Playground. Was it 2007?
2009, I believe.
2009.
Yep.
And that's right about when we started. And we got to know those guys because we used to partner with them a lot, whether it was on some custom shafts, whether it was on events, or they would post some of our stories. We had this really good working relationship with those guys. So Adam called me up and was basically like, hey, I bought back Lacrosse Playground about a year ago. I put some investment into it to get it to where it is, but just from a time suck, I just can't get it going. Do you know anybody who might be interested? And, I kind of said to him, yeah, let me think about it and I'll let you know. And I got some more information on it, just to learn more. And then we talked about it at our board level. And I said, hey, I have this opportunity here. And I'd like to do this. And we kind of talked about it. And we have a great board. One of our board members, his name is Oliver Marty, lacrosse college great, played with the Gate brothers, played at Brown with Coach Towers, and played pro in the MILL for the New York Saints, but ultimately got out of lacrosse and went into the hedge funds, and now is back involved, and he invests in the PLL, and he's got a bunch of things that are going on. So he gets lacrosse, right? So it's not like I'm talking to the board where they were making dish detergent and they don't understand lacrosse. He kind of got it and what that meant. So I called you guys and said, we got to know each other because I think you guys reached out to me last year for Fantasy Lacrosse.
Yep.
And you guys wanted to be able to give away some heads, right? Is that?
That's accurate. Yeah. So we were doing Fantasy Lacrosse, and I remember you first DM'd us in the 2019 season with the PLL when we did a short pick'em for like 3 weeks. You reached out and said, hey, we'd love to give away a prize. And then we gave away gloves, I think then. And then we talked about doing it again with the NLL, and we gave away heads until the season ended up ultimately getting shut down. But that's kind of where our relationship grew. So when you reached out to us, we were like, okay, cool. Like, let's see what, is interesting. I don't think me and Adam really realized the scope of what you guys were planning, but we're really glad you did.
Yeah, I've followed you guys and I like your story. I like how you guys tell the story. Again, we believe that pro lacrosse is going to drive the growth of the game down to the youth level. And in the namesake, you guys have it. And we're not media guys. We build products, but we understand the importance of media and content. And just thought, hey, how can we create this platform that is going to allow Epic to tell sort of a different side of our brand, but also have really cool content that from like an editorial and a journalistic standpoint, we have zero involvement with other than just providing a platform. So, we're not looking to put our thumb on something and say, every story has to be about Matt Rambo, or, we always have to talk about no, this is a legitimate sort of pro media news site. But there's things that Epic can bring as an endemic brand that's unique and different from a content standpoint, from relationships and things of that nature, that we can create this really cool space that's, for the community. And that's the one word I keep coming back to. It's like the lacrosse community. Somebody has something they want to say, they should have a platform where they can come and say it. And that's, so, we started talking and I think it's sort of built and changed and pivoted a little bit, but at the core tenet of it is this kind of, wholly owned subsidiary that's owned by Epic, but Epic's not running it. PLT is.
Yep. No, and I think the editorial integrity that we've set up too is important too for us to be able to do it justice and do it right. And again, I think me and Adam, both being followers of Lacrosse Playground back in its heyday, were really excited not only to bring it back, but to kind of continue the legacy that the Alfreds and Adam O'Neill kind of started. I was fortunate enough to speak with the Alfreds, and we're going to have some content on them and how they kind of formed Lacrosse Playground initially and where they, saw the vision of it going, coming out soon too. But I guess that could be my next question is talk to us a little bit about, more in depth about your relationship with them and kind of, where you saw the brand of itself in Lacrosse Playground go and where you hope to see us take it in the future.
Yeah. The three guys, Tommy, Harry, and Adam, I dealt with Tom and Harry the most. I think Adam was more in the background, getting stuff done and doing that, and where Tommy and Harry were more of the face. And listen, when you're lacrosse is a small industry, and when you come out and you're fighting the Nikes of the world and the Reeboks and trying to elbow your room in, and Eastons, and then you have the Blue Bloods of Warrior and STX. Like, nobody wants to see a new brand. Like, there's a lot of sort of competition there. And lacrosse isn't a cheap sport because it's so small to advertise. You have to build up your reserves and be able to do that. Tommy and Harry were always good to us, and if we had something we wanted to say, they would allow us to say it and put it through their platform. But for us, our brand and the story of the technology was really critical to us. And Lacrosse Playground was sort of like that gear side. That's where people went for gear. And Instagram came in and sort of took that away, where Instagram was like, hey, here are the cool dyed heads. Here's how you string a pocket. And that long form content of the gear reviews and in-depth analysis kind of went away. I spent hours on the Inside Lacrosse forums, looking at different gear and how people strung things and trying to understand that. Instagram sort of pulled that away, but we do believe that there is an opportunity for longer form content. So we believe that there's going to be some gear portion to this, as well as the coverage of the Pro Lacrosse. But Tommy and Alfred were big supporters of ours starting a brand. And by the way, that's not to say that other people weren't. Terry Foy and his group over at Inside Lacrosse with Ryan Rabideau were great to us. And Jeff and Connor at Lacrosse All Stars, we had a good relationship. So it wasn't meant that these guys weren't good and these guys were. But Tom and Harry were, we could pick up the phone and ask them. They'd make introductions to us for dealers and for teams, and had a really cool relationship with them.
I guess, let's talk about what visitors to the site can kind of expect. What are your kind of visions of the site and where it can go from there?
Yeah, I think the simplest comparison to make is it's kind of going to be like a Barstool Sports, but for the lacrosse community. A place where you can go and there's, maybe it's a little bit more lighthearted in some respects. Do different types of podcasts we're going to have in our network. Maybe it won't be hard breaking news, but it's going to be that sort of in-depth analysis where we see trends going, the style side of the sport, things that's a little more community type based than maybe we have now. So I think it's going to be a site where people are going to want to go to often to check in to see what's new and what's different. We have so much stuff that we've talked about, and I don't want to let it all out of the bag yet, but it's, I think it's gonna be cool. And when I look at it as like PLT being that foundation where we are talking about pro lacrosse, whether it's Athletes Limited or it's on the women's side, or it's going to be the PLL or the NLL, where we can utilize some of our athletes and their friends and other athletes to give their perspective, kind of like that Players Tribune type of a point of view. I think that's gonna be really exciting for players. But I also think that you're starting to see these personalities of these athletes develop, and where they sort of shake loose in the storylines that develop as a result of these different personalities and the personalities of the teams. Whether it's the in the NLL, the SEALs, right, in Colorado have distinct different personalities on the field. The same thing with the Chrome, the Chaos versus the Whips, like, these different, and if you look at adjacent sports, you look at like the NFL, or if you look at NHL, these teams have personalities and their players have personalities and there's storylines and there's arcs to the season. I think being able to tell that story, through our site and give a little more of an insight to the consumer and even non-lacrosse players to kind of go and go, oh, this is what lacrosse is about. This is the culture of the game, the community. This is the vibe it's putting off. I think it's additive to the sport.
No, absolutely. And me and Adam are both excited to be involved because I feel like now too, we can take, our coverage to the next level where we are doing, the breaking news and related to lacrosse. We're doing the analysis, we're doing the breakdowns. But then we can also invite other voices onto the platform too. We can showcase the personalities of these players, these different athletes. I think, lacrosse is starting to become even more inclusive, which I think is great. I had a great conversation with the Alfreds who said that was kind of part of their goal too, is to make it more inclusive. And I think we can hopefully continue that legacy. And like you said, just make it an overall fun source for people to kind of go to and look at the latest highlights, but also get, their podcasts, get their analysis, get their videos, get their stringing tutorials and gear reviews. I think we want to bring that back too, because I think there's definitely a lack of that right now and a need that, LPG kind of filled in the past and it has kind of gone away. So we kind of want to bring that back as well. But yeah, it's been great kind of getting your background. We again appreciate you having us on board with this platform, and we're really excited to show everybody, going forward. But James, this is awesome. We appreciate it.
Yeah, no, thanks guys. Appreciate the time, and I appreciate your hard work and understanding the vision and add into the vision and growing this thing. And listen, it's going to be hard work. It's a competitive environment, but I think we have the right people and we have the right vision, and everyone that we talk to about it can't wait to get involved. And so I'm excited for it.
Absolutely. Yeah. So we appreciate you guys tuning in to our first episode of season 3. Again, we shed some light on some of the details going forward for this launch. And again, we're excited to bring Lacrosse Playground back and hope everybody, checks out the site, continues to listen to the podcast. We're going to have some more podcasts, hopefully joining the platform too in the future. PLT is still going to be a big part, but this is going to be something new as well that me and Adam are both excited about. So we appreciate everyone tuning in. So definitely go check out the site, guys. And then let us know what you guys think and what you would like to see from the new LPG. But this has been another episode of Pro Lacrosse Talk. We thank you guys for tuning in. We hope you tune in next time.